The morning sun had barely crested the horizon when Marcus Reyes first noticed something was wrong. The meticulously manicured hedges surrounding his backyard pool were trampled, cigarette butts littered the pristine deck, and what appeared to be a party banner hung limply from his expensive cabana. This wasn't just any invasion, this was a calculated assault on his personal sanctuary. As the city's water commissioner, Marcus was no stranger at conflict. He'd spent years navigating the complex political waters of municipal infrastructure, battling bureaucrats and special interest groups. But this was personal. The Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association had always been a thorn in his side, but this was a declaration of war. He stepped closer to the pool, his Italian leather loafers, a gift from his late father, now dusty from the morning's unexpected discovery. The water's surface was clouded with debris, floating plastic cups, a forgotten flip-flop, and what looked suspiciously like a partially eaten hot dog. The coloring levels would be a nightmare to balance, and as someone who knew more about water management than most, the sight made his stomach churn. Marcus pulled out his phone and began documenting everything. Each cigarette butt, each piece of trash, each sign of unauthorized entry. His fingers moved with the precision of a man who had spent years building cases, collecting evidence that would make even the most brazen opponents shrink. The HOA president, Karen Whitmore, was not going to get away with this. She'd been gunning for him since he rejected her proposal to install decorative fountains that would have wasted thousands of gallons of water during the city's ongoing drought conservation efforts. Marcus remembered their last confrontation at the community center, her face red with anger, her voice shrill as she accused him of being unneighborly and against community improvements. But Marcus knew the real story. As water commissioner, he had access to data that most residents couldn't even comprehend. The city was facing its most severe water shortage in decades, and every drop counted. Those decorative fountains weren't just wasteful, they were a potential ecological disaster. A notification pinged on his phone, an email from the HOA, timestamped from late last night. His eyes narrowed as he read the contents. They had actually, and he could barely believe this, declared his private pool a community resource and held an unauthorized pool party. The email was a mix of bureaucratic language and thinly veiled threats, suggesting that his pool was now considered a shared amenity for the Oak Ridge Estates community. Marcus let out a low, controlled laugh. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The irony wasn't lost on him. He, the very person responsible for managing the city's most critical resource, had just had his private property commandeered by a group of overzealous homeowners. His pool, a 50,000-gallon custom-built oasis that he had designed with water efficiency in mind, was now apparently public property. As he continued to survey the damage, a plan began to form. This wasn't just about a pool anymore. This was about principles, about respect, and about showing the Oak Ridge Estates HOA exactly who they were dealing with. Marcus Reyes wasn't just going to fight back. He was going to make this a lesson they would never forget. The city's municipal building buzzed with its usual mid-morning activity when Marcus strode through the halls, a manila folder tucked under his arm and determination etched into every line of his face. His assistant, Alina Rodriguez, knew that look. It was the same one she'd seen when Marcus had uncovered the massive water meter fraud 2 years ago. "I need everything we have on Oak Ridge Estates," he said, dropping the folder onto Alina's desk. "And I mean everything." Alina's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up digital files and cross-referencing municipal records. As the water commissioner's chief of staff, she was well-versed in Marcus's investigative style. "You're not just talking about water usage, are you?" she asked, a knowing smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Marcus leaned over the computer, his reflection ghosting over the screen of municipal records. The Oak Ridge Estates HOA had a history, and not a particularly clean one. Property tax discrepancies, questionable maintenance contracts, and a series of complaints that had always been just shy of triggering a full investigation. "They picked the wrong person to mess with," Marcus muttered, his finger tracing a line of suspicious financial transactions. The first call came just after lunch. Karen Whitmore, the HOA president, her voice saccharine sweet with an underlying current of threat. "Mr. Reyes, I hope you're not planning to make this incident into something more than it needs to be." Marcus' response was measured, professional, but anyone who knew him could hear the steel beneath his calm tone. "Ms. Whitmore, unauthorized access to private property is a serious matter. The fact that this occurred during a citywide water conservation mandate makes it even more complicated." He had her attention now. The preliminary research was revealing. The HOA had been skating on thin ice for years. Illegal water connections, unreported landscape modifications that violated city conservation codes, and a pattern of deliberately obscuring water usage reports. Marcus realized this wasn't just about his pool. This was about systemic violations that had been flying under the radar for years. Elena interrupted his thoughts, sliding a freshly printed document across his desk. "You might want to see this," she said. Remember those landscape permits we discussed last month? Turns out Oak Ridge Estates never filed the required environmental impact statements for their recent community redesign. It was more than just a smoking gun. It was a full arsenal. Marcus leaned back in his chair, a plan crystallizing in his mind. This wasn't going to be a simple complaint or a minor dispute. He was going to expose the entire operation, and he was going to do it by the book, with every municipal regulation as his weapon. The pool party was just the beginning, and Karen Whitmore had no idea what was coming. As the afternoon light began to stretch long shadows across his office, Marcus picked up his phone. It was time to make some calls, starting with the city's legal department and ending with a few carefully selected investigative journalists who owed him a favor. The city council chambers were packed. Marcus sat in the front row, his crisp navy suit a stark contrast to the nervous energy that filled the room. Behind him, a collection of Oak Ridge Estates residents whispered and fidgeted, their eyes darting between him and Karen Whitmore, who sat rigidly at the defendant's table. What had started as a simple pool invasion had morphed into a full-scale municipal investigation. Marcus's meticulously gathered evidence had uncovered a web of violations that went far beyond a single unauthorized party. Water theft, environmental code breaches, and financial improprieties were now laid bare under the harsh fluorescent lights of the council chambers. Elena had been instrumental in preparing the case. Spreadsheets, satellite images, water usage records, each document was a precise arrow aimed directly at the heart of the HOA's credibility. Marcus knew this wasn't just about his pool anymore. This was about accountability, about protecting the city's most precious resource. Karen Whitmore looked smaller than Marcus remembered. Gone was the blustering HOA president who had tried to intimidate him. Now she was just another bureaucrat caught in the crosshairs of her own hubris. The lead investigator, Detective Robert Chen, approached the podium. His report was damning. We discovered multiple instances of water meter tampering, unauthorized landscape modifications that violated conservation easements, and direct evidence of a systematic attempt to circumvent city water regulations. Marcus watched as the color drained from Karen's face. The most shocking revelation came midway through the hearing. A series of emails revealed that the HOA had been working with a local landscaping company to illegally divert water resources. What they'd done to Marcus's pool was just the tip of the iceberg, a brazen test to see how far they could push their boundaries. Mr. Reyes, the council president, addressed him. Your initial complaint has uncovered what might be the most significant municipal fraud we've seen in a decade. It was a moment of vindication, but Marcus took no pleasure in it. Water was life in their drought-prone region, and these violations were more than just bureaucratic mistakes. They were attacks on the community's most vital resource. During a brief recess, an elderly resident from Oak Ridge Estates approached Marcus. Her name was Margaret Thompson, a longtime resident who had suspected something was wrong, but never had the power to challenge the HOA. "Thank you," she whispered, her weathered hand briefly touching his arm. Someone needed to stand up to them. Marcus nodded, understanding the weight of those words. This wasn't about personal victory. This was about justice, about protecting a community's most fundamental needs. As the hearing resumed, Marcus knew the real battle was just beginning. The HOA would fight back, they always did. But he had something they didn't: irrefutable evidence, institutional support, and an unwavering commitment to the truth. Karen Whitmore's reign was about to come to an abrupt end, and it all started with an unauthorized pool party. The fallout was swift and merciless. Within weeks of the city council hearing, the Oak Ridge Estates HOA crumbled like a house of cards. Karen Whitmore was not only removed from her position, but faced potential criminal charges for water theft and municipal fraud. The landscaping company she had colluded with was under federal investigation, its executives lawyering up faster than they could return phone calls. Marcus found himself thrust into an unexpected role, not just as a water commissioner, but as a reluctant community hero. Local news stations ran feature stories about his meticulous investigation, painting him as a defender of municipal resources and community integrity. It was a spotlight he never wanted, but one he understood was necessary. His pool, the epicenter of the entire controversy, became something of a local landmark. Residents would slow down as they passed his property, pointing and whispering. The trampled hedges had been restored, the debris cleared, but the story lingered like a persistent echo. Not everyone was grateful, however. A small but vocal group of HOA sympathizers began a whisper campaign. Anonymous letters started appearing in mailboxes, suggesting Marcus was on a power trip. Social media became a battleground of misinformation and half-truths. Elena helped him navigate the political minefield. "They're trying to paint you as the villain," she warned one morning, sliding a stack of printed social media posts across his desk. Classic deflection strategy. Marcus knew the playbook. When people couldn't attack the evidence, they attacked the messenger. The most unexpected twist came from an internal source. a whistleblower from within the city's water management department approached Marcus with additional information. Jack Reynolds, a mid-level administrator who had been quietly collecting evidence for years, had been too afraid to come forward until now. The HOA wasn't an isolated incident, Jack revealed during a clandestine meeting in a downtown coffee shop. His hands shook slightly as he pushed a USB drive across the table. There are other developments, other HOAs doing similar things. Oak Ridge was just the most brazen. The USB drive contained a treasure trove of potential investigations. Satellite imagery showing unauthorized water usage, financial records suggesting systemic corruption, and communication logs that hinted at a broader network of municipal fraud. Marcus understood the weight of what Jack was offering. This was more than just a single battle. It was a potential watershed moment for municipal oversight. His phone rang. It was the state attorney general's office. Mr. Reyes, the voice on the other end, was crisp, professional, would like to discuss the Oak Ridge Estate's investigation. Your findings have raised some interesting questions about municipal water management. As he listened to the proposal, Marcus realized the pool party that had started as a personal affront and transformed into something much larger. What began as a violation of his private space was now a catalyst for systemic change. The irony was not lost on him. Karen Whitmore and the HOA had wanted to make his pool public. Now they had inadvertently made his fight for water justice a very public matter indeed. 6 months after the initial pool party incident, Marcus found himself testifying before a state-level commission on municipal water management. The hearing room was a far cry from the local council chambers. This was the big leagues, with cameras rolling and national reporters taking notes. The USB drive from Jack Reynolds had been a game-changer. What had begun as a personal vendetta against his pool had unraveled a complex web of water mismanagement spanning multiple counties. 3 additional HOAs have been implicated, and a task force had been established to investigate similar potential violations across the state. Margaret Thompson, the elderly resident who had first thanked Marcus, sat in the front row. She had become an unexpected ally, rallying other longtime residents who had felt powerless against their HOA boards. Her presence was a constant reminder of why he had pursued this fight. During a break in the testimony, a representative from a national environmental watchdog approached Marcus. Your investigation has become a blueprint for municipal oversight, she told him, her eyes bright with professional admiration. You exposed a systemic issue that most people were too afraid to challenge. But victory came with a price. His personal life had become collateral damage. The constant media attention, the anonymous threats, the social media attacks, they were taking their toll. Elena had become more than just an assistant. She was a confidant and shield, managing the constant barrage of public and professional scrutiny. The state attorney general's office had offered Marcus a special advisory position, a role that would allow him to continue his work on municipal water management reform. It was tempting, but Marcus knew true change required more than just a title. A surprising development emerged from the investigation. The landscaping company involved in the original Oak Ridge Estates scandal had begun cooperating fully. Their CEO, facing potential criminal charges, had become a key witness in exposing broader environmental violations. Jack Reynolds, the whistleblower, had been placed under protective custody. The information he had shared went far beyond water management. It hinted at a broader network of municipal corruption that reached into multiple government departments. One evening, as Marcus sat by his now pristine pool, the site of the initial invasion, he reflected on the journey. What had started as a personal violation had become a movement. The pool, once a symbol of his private sanctuary, was now a metaphor for transparency and accountability. Elena called with an update. The state commission wants a full report by next week, she said. And there's more. Some of the HOAs are starting to voluntarily audit their water usage. They're terrified of being the next Oak Ridge Estates. Marcus looked at the water, its surface now calm and undisturbed. He thought about Karen Whitmore, about Jack Reynolds, about Margaret Thompson. Each of them represented a different face of this complex story: power, fear, resilience. The pool party had been more than just an invasion. It was a catalyst. As the sun set, casting long shadows across his backyard, Marcus knew the real work was just beginning. One pool, one HOA, one investigation at a time, he would continue to fight for accountability.